In the United States, a national debate is raging. It revolves around the benefits of hydraulic fracturing. That, as drilling for natural gas repositions the country in the world energy market. In fact, the United States is projected to become the net exporter of natural gas by 2020. It's all because huge reserves under the American continent are still there to be tapped. Shale gas deposits have also been found in Poland, Argentina, Algeria, China, and Great Britain. But these countries are not expected to catch up to the natural gas boom currently taking place in the United States for at least another 15 years. But is this an energy boom that the United States really wants? Joining me now to offer their takes on all of this, Steve Everley, National Spokesperson for Energy in Depth, a research and education program of the Independent Petroleum Association of America, and Jeff Schmidt, Senior Director of the Pennsylvania chapter of the Sierra Club. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on The Heat. Are there environmental risks from fracking, and are they worth the potential economic benefits here in the United States? And I'll start with you, Jeff.
Well, certainly here in Pennsylvania, where I live, many of our members are experiencing negative environmental problems as a result of the gas drilling that's taking place in their regions. Here in Pennsylvania, we have, according to the state of Pennsylvania, over 160 separate water contamination incidents that the state says were caused by natural gas drilling activities. And this is dramatically affecting people's drinking water supplies and their quality of life in their communities. We are seeing existing quality of life being harmed by natural gas drilling.
Steve?
Well, there's a couple things to bring up. In terms of risks in general, no energy source is perfect. There's no such thing as a risk-free energy source. But the question is whether we can manage those risks and what the benefits are of that energy development. With shale and hydraulic fracturing, the benefits are enormous. We're talking about new jobs, we're talking about manufacturing coming back to the United States, lower energy bills for consumers, cleaner air, by the way. Carbon dioxide emissions are at their lowest level in 20 years in the United States. So these are some of the benefits. The risks are about management, though. Some of the cases that Mr. Schmidt just mentioned, some of those were from several years ago, and Pennsylvania has subsequently updated its regulations to address some of those concerns. This is the pathway forward. You try to find ways that provide rules and a backstop so you can proceed safely.
Okay, but he brings up 160 cases, if I got his number right, of water contamination. Now, the EPA has released a controversial study that came out in 2004 concluding that fracking doesn't pose a threat to drinking water. This month, the Department of Energy released preliminary findings, ongoing study. They also say that fracking stays well below groundwater levels, except that we do hear cases, at least anecdotally, like Jeff brought up. So I want to ask you, is that a real problem?
Well, the issue is not with the issue with the hydraulic fracturing process itself. State regulators have affirmed over and over again that there's no evidence of hydraulic fracturing itself actually contaminating groundwater. A regulator from Texas actually said you have a better chance of hitting the moon with a Roman candle. The reason is because of the separation between groundwater resources and where the shale is actually being produced from. But there are risks. There are issues that we've seen with well casing and other items. But again, the question is, are we understanding what those risks are, and are we moving forward in a way that provides more protections? And we are. In Pennsylvania, in Colorado, in Texas, all regulators are moving forward, and in fact, with environmental groups as a part of those discussions.
Now, Jeff, he says they're making improvements. Would you agree?
Well, I think that there have been minor improvements in the state regulations, but we don't have strong enforcement here in Pennsylvania. And again, I have to state that over 160 separate incidents of water contamination were determined to have been caused by gas drilling activities. Now, it may be true that the act of hydrofracking is not the place where the pollution is occurring. It is as a result of poor casings that were done by the gas companies, but the bottom line is they wouldn't be drilling in these areas unless they had the hydrofracking technology. And I have to point out that hydrofracking using horizontal drilling, which is what we're talking about, is a relatively new technology that is largely untried in Pennsylvania. And so here in Pennsylvania, we're finding that we are an experiment, and there are a lot of victims who are the casualties of the experiment here in Pennsylvania of hydraulic fracture using horizontal drilling.
Let me ask you this, because there's been some reports at Youngstown, Ohio, I'm sure both of you have heard of this, where folks feel as though the fracking caused earthquakes there, and there is a Columbia professor who did some studies who believes that is the case, and I want to ask you about that. Is it kind of tampering with Mother Nature? Is that a possibility that earthquakes could occur as a result of fracking?
This is actually wastewater injection, which is a completely separate process. It's regulated by the EPA. It's governed by a whole set of different rules, and sometimes it's done by a company that's not the same company that's hydraulically fracturing. Wastewater disposal is something that the EPA has said for decades is a safe and inexpensive option for disposing of waste, whether it's from oil and gas or manufacturing or any other industrial process. So it's important to separate those out. In the Columbia study that you mentioned, they actually were very clear that this wasn't actually hydraulic fracturing.
Jeff, I want to give you a chance to respond. You think it's responsible for some of these earthquakes?
Well, it is our understanding, based on the studies that have been done by geologists, that a lot of the earthquakes that are occurring in Ohio are close by to the injection wells that are receiving the wastewater, the contaminated wastewater from a variety of gas drilling activities, including wells that have been hydraulically fractured. And you have to understand that we're talking about each well generating millions of gallons of contaminated wastewater that's laced with radioactive materials, chemicals, and materials and metals, harmful metals that are found deep underground that are brought back up to the surface as a result of the fracturing process. And these millions of gallons per well have to be taken somewhere and either treated or disposed of. And the industry has found it a lot cheaper to just send it underground in one of these underground injection wells rather than actually treating it to remove the contamination.
Do you feel at all torn, though, in a sense? I mean, CO2 emissions are coming down as a result of natural gas. I mean, there are benefits to the environment, correct?
Well, I think it's fair to say that if you're burning natural gas compared to burning coal, the resultant carbon dioxide emissions are a lot less from natural gas. But you have to also look at the cycle of production of natural gas, where you have a large volume of methane emissions that are coming out during the production process, both by leaky wells and leaky transmission systems and compressor stations and the flaring of natural gas. And the methane that's emitted during that process is much more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. In fact, it can be up to 20 to 50 times more potent as a global warming gas than carbon dioxide.
Well,
so
let me stop you there for just a second, because I want to give Steve a chance to respond, because he's in here kind of laughing.
Well, the methane emission thing, this is something that opponents have brought up over and over again, pretending that there are these astronomical numbers of methane emissions. And they've taken these sort of individual studies around the country. There's two from a government agency and then one from a discredited professor in Cornell. And the EPA, which has the best data on this, has shown that since 1990, natural gas production has soared and methane emissions have actually gone down. The leakage rate is somewhere between 1% and 2%, and most credible scientists will tell you that anywhere between 2% and 3% natural gas maintains its climate advantage.
Jeff, you know, the Obama administration has made natural gas a substantial part of its energy policy. Is that a good move on the part of the Obama administration?
We are very disappointed that President Obama has made natural gas such a cornerstone of his all of the above energy policy, which includes coal, by the way. And we do think that the administration would be better advised to focus more greatly on clean, renewable, non-polluting energy sources such as solar and wind.
But Jeff, you know that those are intermittent, though, you know, and they can't produce the type of energy we're talking about with natural gas. I mean, that's a given.
I think it's not a given that in the future we can change and increase our capacity for solar and renewable energy, but the natural gas industry is actually fighting efforts to create incentives for increasing use of renewable energy, because they're not interested in creating a bridge to renewable energy. They would like to have basically a permanent lock on energy use by natural gas and not allow the expansion of renewable energy. We think that's a mistake.
All right, Steve, I'm going to get you the final word.
Well, I think if we're going to continue to reduce emissions like we have with natural gas use, then I think that's a good thing. If we're going to continue to reduce local air pollution like we have with natural gas, that's a good thing. And by the way, most experts will actually tell you that natural gas is the perfect complement to the growth of renewables. Both the wind and the solar industries have said natural gas is a great complement to us because it can be ramped up and down to match some of that intermittent supply. So natural gas is a great partner moving forward with this for cleaner air and for a cleaner energy future.
Steve, Jeff, thank you both for joining us today. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.